Hello, my name is Paulette Downey, and I'm back again with a word from the Lord. So, God has been speaking to me a lot about this one. This is a topic that we all can use, some more than others. I'm sure it's a topic that some people have worked on in their lives. Like it's an area in which they have worked on, they've addressed it, and it's a continuous thing. And then there are other people I know who probably haven't touched on it. God is telling me that there are some people out there that He definitely is pinpointing and that He wants to hear this message. So this is for a few people at least. It's something that everybody can learn from and continue to work on, including myself. But God has made it a point of saying that this is definitely for a few people out there that he wants to reach regarding this. So it is base. It is the topic for this one is the destruction that pride brings. So it was interesting how God brought this to me, and how He basically wants me to set this whole thing up, the template that He has given me in order to explain it and to actually make it nice and neat. And this is something that I learned in psychology class. 30 years ago. I mean, this has been a long time. So, I mean, like, like that's not my major. Psychology is not my major, but I did take some psychology classes when I was in college. And so the fact that I can even remember this template, God brought it to me, so I'm going to use it because it does make things nice and succinct when explaining this. So basically, I'm going to talk about pride and the destruction of it using using superego, ego, and id. And with I'm going to start off with the superego of pride. I'm going to use pride for the superegos, pride for ego, pride for id. So talking about pride using those three as a template. So with a super ego, somebody who has a super ego is somebody who thinks they're invincible, somebody who thinks that there is nobody like them, nobody above them. It's almost like it's like a God complex. And so they think that they are the cream of the crop, so to speak, the cat's meow. There are four types of pride. So there's pride in appearance, there's pride in knowledge, there's pride in spirituality, and there's pride in power. So there's four types of pride. So you take the super ego with those four types of pride, and you pretty well have an idea. So if it's, say, for appearance, then someone would think that they are the most beautiful person in the whole wide world, and that there's no one else like them that has ever touched the earth. Somebody with knowledge, they probably would think that they are the most knowledgeable person in the whole wide world. Someone with power would probably say, you know what, I'm God. Without me, you're nothing. Like you live, you die, it's all through me. And so with someone with spirituality, it's basically like, like I am, like as say someone like walking like a Christian, that, they look at themselves as perfect. And so they have this whole religious way in which they approach Christianity. I don't do this, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do this, I don't do that. Therefore, I am the ideal, perfect Christian. So that you would categorize in the super ego is someone who is very sure of who they are, and they just kind of think they're above it. And so with this category, this was a category where Satan saw his downfall. This is a category where Satan was looked at almost as the number two in heaven, so to speak. He was a cherubim, above cherubim, so to speak. He was the lead musician. He had beauty like no other angel, and he was always in the presence of God. He always got to see the face of God. And because he always got to see the face of God, he had that glow about him. He had that presence about him that gave him a godlike appearance. And so, because the angels were in awe of him and everyone was just in awe of him and of his beauty, so he had the beauty, and then he had that whole presence of God glowing on him. He thought he was God, and he thought that he could overthrow God. So basically, what happened with Satan, his pride overtook his wisdom. So now he no longer was thinking in a clear mind, because he thought who he was enough to become God. Like, he actually wanted to take over heaven and become God. And he thought he could become God simply because of the admiration of the angels. And he found out very shortly that his appearance and his beauty and all of his talents weren't enough to qualify him or qualify him, nor give him the power to overthrow God when he was kicked out of heaven and into the second heaven. So that would be your perfect idea, or your perfect example of somebody who has a super ego, who thought he could be God and be better than God, not just be God. Like, God is God. God created Satan and all the angels and all of the heaven, but Satan thought not only that he could be God, but he could be better than God. And so he found out shortly that that was not the case. So he became completely delusional. He became completely wrapped up in his pride instead of using his wisdom. And of course, that was his downfall. And so that would be a super ego type person. And with that type of thinking, you're only going to end up destroying, your life, destroying whatever it is you have, because there is no one person in this world that is the best, the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most talented, the most spiritual. They're just, there is not that. Like, there isn't a finite, there isn't a finite level where these things are concerned. And so when you start thinking in that realm, when you start thinking like that, you are going to face your demise one way or another. And it may not happen today. It may not even happen tomorrow, but eventually it will happen. And especially if you are thinking that way and you are operating in that mode, and you've been operating in that mode for a long time, and you've been operating in that mode for a long time successfully. And so what happens is the whole arrogance and the conceit of that continues to operate at that level, thinking that you're unstoppable and that you can never be brought down. And of course, we have seen throughout history that that is not the case when you are operating at that level. So that is a super ego, and that is something, like, you as an individual need to ask yourself, am I operating out of that place? Like, be honest, because this message that I am bringing, I'm not bringing this message for you to say, oh yeah, Mike is like that, or oh yeah, Susie is like that, oh yeah, Nikki is like that. This message that I am bringing, that God has asked me to speak on, is for the individuals that are listening to this. So it's not about other people. It's not about you pointing the finger at other people. It's about you and you being honest with yourself and you saying, do I operate out of this place? Do I have a super ego in these areas? What am I doing to operate? Do I want to continue living like this? Because this type of thinking is going to affect the course of your life. Maybe not right now, but eventually, maybe it may be affecting the course of your life right now. But a super ego, it's almost delusional. It's not even to the point of being insecure with oneself. It's like it's super ego, so it's almost like you're on a high of who you are. So it's like a god complex. It's basically a god complex, and there's only one God. And so beauty and power and like the spirituality, like what we have, and there's one more here, knowledge. It all comes from God. God has given it to us. He has freely given us these gifts. And it comes from Him. We need to thank Him for it and understand that He wants us to be responsible with all the gifts and with the talents that He has entrusted us with. So, go to God. Ask yourself, be honest with yourself. Is this me? And then speak to God and ask God, like, is this me? Reveal this to me. Help me with this. This is not something that I want to continue with. And now we have now the ego, which the ego is very like it's natural. It's what most people have. It's what most people operate out of the ego. So most of us operate from the ego point, which is a healthy point. It becomes unhealthy when we 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 lie to ourselves about certain behaviors or that we may or may not have, when we don't want to face certain things in our lives that are affecting our egos, then that becomes a problem. But most of us operate out of a place of our ego. And so with the ego, I'm going to try and use a really good example here. I'm going to use myself because I think me using me, I can only think of myself right now for a lot of these things. When okay, I was working. Um, I was working as an event planner and communications coordinator for a company. And so at this company, we didn't have like it was a small company, and so I was that person. So basically, like I said, I did all the communications, marketing, as well as events. I did a few administrative stuff, of course that's going to follow, but I basically was in charge of everything, following everything that followed under the umbrella of public relations, communications, and event management. So then we had another person who worked in another. He had an area in which he worked under as well. He's a coordinator, and then we had the director, and then we had the board of directors, who we all reported to as well. And so the gentleman who was working at the company, he was working there for 3 years. I was working there. He was working there for almost 3 years. I was working there for almost 2 years. The director was working there for about maybe 5 months, and the the gentleman was off once or twice a week, every week. Like he called in sick. There was always something wrong every single week. Like he was off, and they couldn't get rid of him. I mean, like they couldn't get rid of him. Yeah, he was a wealth of knowledge, and they just couldn't get rid of him. But he was off, at least twice a week, every single week, and there's no exaggeration in that. So then you have the director who was there for 5 months. So she did not know everything about the organization, and on top of that, there is that she was there for 5 months, but there were certain skill sets that was being expected of her that she simply couldn't meet. And the board of directors didn't know that. So uh, so you had and she didn't have them. She just didn't have them. And like I said, and she was there for 5 months. So there is. There's a learning curve when you start with a company. They usually say it takes 6 months to a year to really become familiar with the company. But I mean, still, you have to do your work. You have to pull your weight, so to speak. You can't use that as an excuse. And I'm not saying she used that as an excuse, but I'm just saying there is that period, that kind of like that grace period, and you do afford people that. So there was that, but like I said, there were certain things that she just couldn't do. Like she just didn't have the skill set to do. So then there was me. And I don't know if some of you may be seeing where I'm going with this, but what ended up happening was a lot of things ended up on my plate. And so I had my job to do, which was a big job. And I had the other person's job to do because we would help each other out. Uh, but I seemed to be doing a lot more helping because the gentleman was away twice a week. So what would happen is when certain clients of his were in emergency situations and he wasn't in the office, and then they would contact me, and of course these are emergency situations. I mean, these people are professionals and they needed certain information. They needed their license. They needed certain things at certain time, or else they could not be working. They wouldn't be able to work. So because I couldn't, like, I mean, I could have said, you know what, like, I can't do this, but these are human beings who have families and who have lives. And there was no way that I could knowingly, like knowing their story, and say, okay, I can't help you. So I had to end up helping these people because the person who was supposed to help them wasn't there to help them. And then I had somebody else who didn't fully understand the organization, and then some of the tasks that she was being asked, um, she couldn't do. So then it was also being pushed on me, and then I had my job, and so there was that one thing in a corner there. And so then the second thing in the corner was the fact that with my director, we coordinated a lot of events. We organized and coordinated a lot of events, from the inception to the day of events. And so what ended up happening is that my director and I, we actually took the events to a whole new level. Like the two of us, of course, we had help, but it was the two of us. It was the two of us who took the events of the past and made the events bigger. And so when I was with the company the previous year, um, I wasn't the event that I had worked on, the big event. Like I worked on several events for the company. I did several events for the company, but then there was like the big conference that would take place once a year, where you would have you would have the workshops and the breakout sessions, and like just the whole 9 yards, the speakers, the guest speakers, and everything. And so there was one, like I came in the middle of it. So even though I got to do some of it, I didn't get to do all of it. So I didn't get to plan it fully to my liking. But then the following year, I did. So I was given complete autonomy because that's how I work. I'm not one of those people who can be micromanaged. I just can't produce. So my director, he saw that, and like the board of directors and everything like that, and they gave me complete autonomy of planning these events, because that's where my creativity flows. That's where I'm able to do my best work. And so my director and I, we put in a lot of time, a lot of our time to build these events. And we, like, I don't want to, I'm not trying to be conceited, but we got a lot, got a lot of compliments from the attendees about how well the event was managed, and the changes that were done to it and everything. Like, we just took it to a whole new level. And so that's what we wanted to do the following year. Well, what ended up happening was, because of what we did, what the two of us did, and like I said, we had people helping us, we had people assist, but we were the ones who actually, like, the whole, like, the format and the layout and everything, it was the two of us together. And so what ended up happening is, for people, like, no one could have cared less about the events and touching them and doing anything with them, to because of how they turned out. Now everyone wanted a part of it. And so my director became a target. And so they were all just going after him, like he had his plans, because we were the ones who got it to that place. So we had our we had our plans of how we were going to plan it for the next one. And so he just became a target, and it became too much pressure for him. And, like, he had to step down. And so he pulled me aside and he said, Paulette, he explained to me exactly why he stepped down. And he said, unfortunately, because I'm gone, you are going to be the target. And, like, we got along so well. And, I believed him, but I didn't believe him. Like, I didn't understand the full scope of what he was saying. But he was saying, you and I were the ones who really brought this thing to a new level. So because I am gone now, you're now wearing that target alone. And so I just need to, forewarn you. And so, of course, like I said, I kept that in the back of my mind, but I just didn't really see how that could be. Well, as the months became, as the months grew, sure enough, I became that target. So I became, like, there was constant resistance as to, how we were to do these events. And he was right. Like, I became a target. And so then there was that stress of people trying to up me, because they were trying to up him, and he was like, enough. So now it was, okay, now he's gone. No one cared for the events prior, but because of how great, because of how well this one was, now everyone wanted to become a part of the next one. So it got to the point where everyone had a say, everyone had an idea, everyone, and it came to the point where I didn't have any autonomy anymore. There was still a certain amount of autonomy that I had. There was that, but there was a lot of resistance as to how I wanted to take it and where I wanted it to go. And so then I was dealing with that, and and then I was dealing with the whole the office stuff. as well. And like one thing about myself is that I am very well aware of my strengths. God has made it very clear to me what my strengths are, what my talents are, what my strength, my talents, my skill set, my strengths. He's made it crystal clear. He's allowed me to see clearly into those. I know what my strengths are. I know what my talents are. I know what my skill sets are. I know who I am and what I bring to the table and what I offer. And so with that, with that, there, like, I'm not a conceited person. I'm not. But with certain skill sets, I am. I have been. I have been. Like, I think it's important to know who you are, to know what you bring to the table, to know what you can offer a company. Um, but not to the point where you think that you're it. And so it's not so much that I thought I was it, but I knew that I was the one basically holding, I was the glue that was holding the company together because there were three of us. And just the whole dynamics, I knew that. I wasn't using that position to threaten anyone or any way like that, but I knew that. Um, but then with this whole resistance thing, so there was the whole kind of like there was the kind of cockiness in knowing that I'm good at doing this, I'm good at doing that, I know that I can do this, I know that I can do that, and trust me, God worked with me on that. God worked with me on that. He let me know. He was very clear in letting me know that the gifts that you have, I gave them to you. You didn't manufacture those gifts. Those were gifts that I gave to you, that I put in you, and I want you to use them for your glory. Because I mean, I was a full Christian back then, just like I am now. I was a full Christian, and so he let me know since, not at the time. Um, so there was that, but then there was also the fear because I was seeing the resistance. I was seeing like everyone like, because everyone wanted a piece of the events now, and before it was just me and like my director and like a few other people, but everyone wanted a say. And so I had this fear of, okay, they're going to let me go. So even though I knew I was the glue that was holding the place together, my id was kicking in, the id of not thinking I'm enough, if you can believe that. It was actually kicking in. Not thinking that I'm not enough, no, not that, but just thinking that, just that fear that, okay, they'd get rid of me because they want the events, they want to do it, and they don't want me to do it anymore. And so my rationale, my wisdom, I wasn't thinking clearly. So I had all of that coming at me all at once. I was working in the beauty industry. I was working in the beauty industry part time. I was pulling 50 hours at least a week working in my full time job. I was working twice a day, working in the beauty industry. I was attending every single training. If there were like 30, 40 trainings going on, I attended every single one of them. I worked it. I worked it. And so, because of the company that I was working for, and because of how I worked, and that they knew that they could trust me and I was reliable. Like they would give me, like, for all the extra hours that I work, I'd get like lieu days. So I'd take those lieu days and I would do the trainings during the, like I'd take, like a day off, like not a day, entire day, but like a morning off and go on the training. So I was going on the trainings. I couldn't give the trainings up. I couldn't, like my career was event management. Um, that's what I went to school for. Public relations, but event management specifically. So I didn't even know why I continued to stay in the beauty industry. I, like I would say to God in the mornings, like, why am I going? And God would basically say, go, just go. And I didn't understand at the time why he was saying it, but he was saying it because he wanted me in the beauty industry. Like, he actually did not, like, he wanted me in the event management industry for a time to get the experience that I needed, um, in the business world, in the PR world, in marketing, in communications, to use that, with the beauty, um, industry experience that I gathered, and like marry it together. So he wanted it for that purpose, but he did not want it for me to have a career like I thought. I thought that was it. That was it. So, but at the time I didn't know. So I'm going somewhere with this. Please, please, I am going somewhere with this. So there were a whole lot of dynamics going on. I had the fear of all of the people coming at me about the event. Like, I look at it and, like, in hindsight, and I mean, it really was nothing. And that company was really for me. They did a lot for me. So where the fear came from, I don't know, because that company really backed me. And then, but yes, this was it. Um, I, I can be outspoken. And, sometimes to my detriment. God has helped me with that. Like, when I say things, I say it truthfully. I don't say things to hurt people. I don't say things to slander people. I don't say things to make people look bad. Um, but sometimes I would say things, and maybe I shouldn't have said it. So I was talking with my director, because this has happened a few times and they know me. So we were in a meeting and I was talking to, um, my communications director. And we were talking. It's just two of us talking, and we're in a room full of people. And, as we were talking, then I said something, and I was saying it to him, but my mouth being as loud as it is, um, it traveled. And so, more people heard it. And the board of directors, she's like looking at me and she's like, Paulette. And she's like, Paulette. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like, so that, like, she was really upset because like I said, God has dealt with me with that. But, like I said, I can be truthful almost to a fault. And, there are certain places where it's just best not to say anything. But I was not even saying, like, I was having a conversation with my, communications director. So it was just between the two of us. And, but my voice was overheard. So she wasn't, I mean, like, she wasn't mad to the point of letting me go or anything like that, but she's like, Paula, you really do have to, and so, but there was that there. So there was that. And then there were so many things coming at me. And I, like, and then, like I said, and then I was doing the trainings, and what ended up happening was I ended up quitting the job. Like, I ended up quitting the job, my career job, um, out of fear. And it wasn't like there were, like I said, there was the ego there. And I'm not going to say super ego, because I didn't think I was like but an ego, like, because we're talking now in the healthy terms, where, my ego was definitely there. I knew my strengths. But I also had that id, I had that id feeling of, they're going to let me go because of this, they're going to let me go because of that. Like, I had my insecurities, which insecurities that were coming from the past, like, just like past insecurities of people not, you know, not respecting me, say, the way I should have been respected, in the workforce. And so I just felt I felt those insecurities, and I allowed that to affect my choice. So when I went home, like I said, I was exhausted. I'm not blaming exhaustion. I'm not going to blame tiredness. I'm not going to blame fatigue. I was in my sound state of mind when I made the decision. I may have been tired when I made the decision, but I made the decision in a sound state of mind. So when I made it, like, I sent the email off, and I didn't consult God, whereas everything on that job I talked to God about, and I didn't consult God about that. As so when I sent the email off, God blocked it. I knew he did. Wouldn't go through. And I'm like, no. And it was almost like, you don't want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do it. Sent it off again. God blocked it. It would not go. And then the third time, I said, I want it. And then it went. And it was so funny because then after, like, I sent in that letter that I was going to leave and everything. And then I went to church. I told my pastor about it. And he's like, is this something you normally do? Like, is this something you normally do? And I lied to him and I told him no. And he saw it. He saw it in the spirit that I normally, when things get really, really difficult, I bolt. And so that was a very humbling moment for me. And God really worked with me on that. He has been putting me through a process of, no matter how hard, that's why he's made things so things have become harder now, to teach me a lesson, not to teach me, but to toughen me, that just because things are tough, you don't bolt on them. You do not bolt on things just because they come tough. But he's worked with my pride, because he saw where that could become a problem in my future. And so he actually had to work with my pride and tell me that those gifts and those talents that you have, everything that you have, I gave them to you. I gave them to you. They're for my glory. It's not for you. Because I was looking at it, it's me. It's me. Like, this is me, and it's not me. It's for the glory of God. God gave me this, the talents that he has given me, the skills that he has given me. It's for his glory. And what God has given you is for his glory. It's not for us. So be it beauty, be it power, be it your walk with God, be it, what is it, knowledge. It's all for the kingdom of God. It has nothing to do with us, and with our person. And so God has worked with me on that. I am at a point now where, yes, I still know I'm still very well aware of the skill sets and my strengths and the talents and what I bring to the table. But it's not about me anymore. It's not about me getting credit, because when I was at the company, I didn't like the fact that I was doing work. Okay. I didn't like the fact that I was doing work. I'm sorry, there was a security guard. I didn't like the fact that I was doing work for, I didn't like the fact that I was doing work for my superior and she was getting credit for the work that I was doing for her. I thought that I should get the recognition for the work that I was doing for her. So they were giving her all the praises, but I was the one who was doing it. And that was my ego kicking in. That was not me working as a team player. That was not me working as